Scott, du lebst in den USA im Bundesstaat New York. Hast du schon Auswirkungen erlebt von der neuen Zollpolitik der USA? Haben sich die Preise bestimmter Produkte verändert? Fangen manche Leute an zu horten? Wie ist dein Eindruck eine Woche nach Trumps Liberation Day?
I'm not an economist, and I don't want to pretend that I know anything about tariffs. Historically, tariffs have been linked to protectionist postures by governments and U.S. governments, and haven't ended well for the United States. A president that I have a great respect for, Ronald Reagan, spoke vociferously against tariffs. But these are superficial observations made by somebody who couldn't tell you the first thing how tariffs work, how income is generated, and how that income would find its way to the U.S. Treasury. So I know that Donald Trump has implemented a very aggressive tariff-based economic policy, and it's caused markets to collapse in many areas and perform poorly. And there are people out there who are saying that this is going to be great for America in the long term. Other people are saying that this will be bad for America. And many people speak of what Trump is doing as upsetting the globalization that had defined international economic relations for decades. All of this may be true. None of it may be true. Some of it may be true. In my little bubble, there's been no impact. If I turned off the news, if I turned off the radio, and if I turned off the computer, I wouldn't know that these tariffs existed. When I go to the stores, the prices seem to be exactly what they were before Trump announced these tariffs. That doesn't mean that down the road prices will be different. I'm not in the market for high-end items. I'm not looking to buy a new iPhone or a new computer or a new car. So maybe I'm just looking in the wrong places. I don't know. I am, like everybody else, watching with great interest to see what happens. This is a fascinating development. It's never happened before. And there are no analytical models that one can fall back on as precedent to try and predict what's going to happen. So it's a wild, adventurous ride. And I've just tightened my seatbelt and off we go.
Ist die Zollpolitik ein Schritt zur Stärkung der US-Wirtschaft? Oder wird der US-Handelspolitik und damit auch der US-Außenpolitik damit ein irreparabler Schaden zugefügt, wie die Kritiker behaupten? Oder anders gefragt, wem nützt und wem schadet diese Zollpolitik?
I've said, and I think Trump's tariff policies have backed this up, that we're in the midst of a revolution. We have a domestic political revolution. We have a revolution of how America interacts with the rest of the world. And now we have this economic revolution. This is revolutionary. And when you have revolutions, the pillars of the system that is being revolted against tend to collapse. And that's what we're seeing. I don't know if this is going to succeed. As I said, I don't understand the nuances of the dynamics involved. What I do know is the following. The United States was $36 trillion in debt, is $36 trillion in debt. Left, if this problem was left unresolved, we were heading towards debt compression that would have seen the U.S. debt skyrocket to $54 trillion and keep climbing without any hope of recovery. Now, I haven't found an economist yet that says that's a good thing. I take a look at the United States and I ask myself, where is our industry? Why have we sent all the jobs abroad? Is this the healthiest way to go forward? And the one thing I can say is that when you have systems that are so deeply ingrained, institutionalized, the only way you can make change, meaningful change, is to take down the system, the entire system, because otherwise the system is too strong to, it will withstand partial efforts, incomplete efforts. If you're saying the system is broken, if you're saying that the economy is not performing the way it needs to perform, there has to be dramatic changes, then maybe the best way to bring it down is with a sledgehammer that tears the whole thing down. And maybe that's what these tariffs are seeking to do. So for the people who are screaming, the sky is falling, it is falling. The system is collapsing. Maybe that's the intent. I don't know. As I said, I'll just tighten the seatbelt a little bit more because the ride's going to get that much more adventurous.
Aus den Reihen der US-Demokraten erhebt sich die Forderung nach einem Amtsenthebungsverfahren gegen Donald Trump, einem Impeachment. Der US-Kongressabgeordnete Al Green hat geschworen, innerhalb von 30 Tagen ein solches Verfahren einzuleiten. Aus seiner Sicht hat eine undemokratische Machtergreifung durch Elon Musk stattgefunden. Wie siehst du das? Und ist das überhaupt mehr als ein PR-Gag, um die Demokraten wieder in die Schlagzeilen zu bringen?
It's PR stuff. It's not going to happen. It's stupid and it's not worthy of comment. I mean, people are allowed to disagree with policy and such. I just remind Mr. Green and the other Democrats that you just lost the national election. The American people have voted. They voted for change. And now we're in the midst of change. No one thought you'd be happy about it. And nobody cares that you are, in fact, unhappy about it. It doesn't matter.
Die europäische Mainstream-Presse schäumt vor Wut angesichts der US-Zollpolitik. Vor allem widerstrebte ihr, dass neben der EU fast die gesamte Welt sanktioniert wurde, nicht aber Russland. Das löste größtes Unverständnis aus. Das Weiße Haus argumentierte die niedrige Handelsbilanz mit Russland. Andererseits verwies es auf die laufenden Verhandlungen mit Moskau. Welche Strategie siehst du darin? Soll Russland damit ein Angebot gemacht werden? Oder geht es um die Art der Waren, die noch von Russland bezogen werden, zum Beispiel Uran?
I don't know. I don't sit in on U.S. policy making. I could speculate that it's a combination of not wanting to alienate the Russians while very sensitive negotiations are underway that will have a major impact on the international scene, regardless of which direction they go. I could argue that the United States needs the uranium, the titanium, and the other precious metals that we are importing from Russia, and we don't want to disrupt that. I could also point out the United States has classified the European Union as an enemy, an economic enemy that's been stealing from us blindly and living under our economic umbrella for decades, and we're now calling them out on that. It seems to me to be some deflection on the part of Europe, not focusing on the problem, which is their policies, and instead trying to blame Russia. I think the European Union should spend more time looking in the mirror and pointing fingers. There's a reason why they've been sanctioned, and there's a reason why the United States is turning its back on Europe. And it's because of Europe's poor performance as a friend and an ally of the United States over the years, especially when it comes to the lack of balance between trade between between the European Union and the United States. So I don't know. It just sounds to me like somebody aboard the Titanic yelling at the band that we're not happy with the songs you're playing while the ship sinks. Who cares?
Vergangene Woche war der russische Sondergesandte Kirill Dmitriev in Washington. Seitdem scheinen die Verhandlungen jedoch auf der Stelle zu stehen. Die Ukraine demonstriert beständig ihren Unwillen, sich an Abmachungen zwischen Washington und Moskau zu halten. Russland andererseits scheint nur Brotkrumen anzubieten. Wie bewertest du die Aussichten für Trumps Friedensprojekt? Und was passiert, sollte er keinen Erfolg damit haben?
First of all, things haven't come to a standstill. The mere fact that Mr. Dmitriev was in the United States is proof positive of this. And my understanding is that there will be a high-level meeting between the United States and Russia in Istanbul this coming weekend, where these issues will be discussed. So I wouldn't use the term standstill. There is movement. The problem is that Russia has positions that are non-negotiable. And these positions are unacceptable to Ukraine and unacceptable to the European Union. So the United States has to make a decision. Does the United States think they have a better chance of taking into account the objections of Ukraine and the European Union and NATO and try to pressure Russia into yielding on those points Russia says we will never yield upon? Or will the United States recognize reality and in turn put pressure on Ukraine and NATO and the European Union to accept reality as the only path forward? If the United States is truly interested in peace, the choice is clear. It has to yield to reality. If there's a different agenda at play, where Donald Trump is using peace as his verbal cover for just a restructuring of the different bases of power in Europe to the benefit of the United States, then there won't be peace. There will be war, and the United States won't get what it wants. So we'll just be further embroiled into entangled into a conflict that will continue to churn through countless lives. So I don't know. It's up to the Trump administration to let us know what their true agenda is.
In den vergangenen Wochen versuchten die europäischen NATO-Staaten alles, um die Friedensverhandlungen zu stören und die Ukraine weiterhin im Krieg gegen Russland zu halten. Zu diesem Zweck riefen sie eine Koalition der Willigen ins Leben. Mittlerweile hat sich der Medienrummel gelegt und diese Koalition scheint sich, abgesehen von Macrons üppigen Parfumkonsum, verzogen zu haben. War es da schon von der Koalition der Willigen? Ein paar kräftige Worte, ein paar 100 Milliarden Euro, die den europäischen Steuerzahlern aus den Taschen gezogen und der Rüstungsindustrie übergeben werden? Oder kann es den EU-Zwergen wirklich gelingen, die Ukraine im Krieg zu halten?
I think that the truth is somewhere in between. The coalition of the willing is never going to achieve the decisive actions that it claims to want to achieve, the mobilization of significant forces, French, British, and others, and deploying them on the ground in Ukraine as a peacekeeping force that intimidates the Russians and, causes them to back down and yield. That's not going to happen. But they are succeeding, as we alluded to in the previous question, in muddying the waters, making it difficult for Donald Trump to move forward on a peace plan, thereby extending the war. And every day the war is extended is a victory for European Union and NATO, because they can only justify their continued existence and their ongoing efforts to restructure Europe as a militaristic entity if Russia can be shown to be a threat. And Russia is more easily demonstrated to be a threat if Russia is in an ongoing conflict with Ukraine on the scope and scale that currently exists. So neither NATO nor Europe is interested in peace. They're interested in extending this war. Ukraine is the victim. They're because it's Ukraine that ultimately will pay the price for this folly. But the Europeans aren't able. They're not able to achieve what they want to achieve, but what they're able to do is extend the suffering of Ukraine.
Lass uns über den Nahen Osten sprechen. Siehst du eine drohende Eskalation zwischen dem Iran und den USA? Präsident Trump hat nach den Bombardierungen der Houthi im Jemen deutliche Warnungen in Richtung Teheran gesendet. Sein Schulterschluss mit dem israelischen Premierminister Netanyahu ist klar und deutlich. Der Iran hingegen macht klar, sie lassen sich nicht schikanieren und drohen mit einem verheerenden Gegenschlag, sollten die USA sie angreifen. Sind das alles nur Gesten, um die andere Seite abzuschrecken? Oder droht tatsächlich die Gefahr eines Krieges?
I believe there's a real threat of war. Both sides are mobilizing resources, and left unchecked, this could lead to decisive and devastating conflict. But I don't think that threat is imminent. The reason why I say that is that both Iran and the United States appear to have embraced the diplomatic path. In fact, I think today, Steve Witkoff, the special envoy of Donald Trump for the Middle East, is in Oman in meetings with Foreign Minister Arakchi, the Iranian Foreign Minister. They call them sort of they're meeting, but they're indirect talks because apparently they're being monitored or mediated by Oman. But U.S. and Iranian negotiators are at the same place talking about how to resolve this issue. Russian and Chinese negotiators are also meeting with the Iranians to talk about how to shape their nuclear program in a way that is less threatening, seen as less threatening by the United States, the European Union, and the IAEA. And the Director General of the IAEA himself is talking about traveling to Iran to discuss how the safeguards agreements could be improved in order to alleviate concerns that exist in the United States, Israel, and elsewhere, that Iran's program is little more than a threshold nuclear weapons program disguised as a peaceful nuclear enrichment program. Because that's the crux of the issue right now is, the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, when it was signed in 2015, introduced the concept of the danger of Iran being a threshold nuclear power, even though this concept isn't enshrined in either the NPT or Iran's prior safeguards agreement. It had become an issue and was identified as an issue, the issue for the 2015 JCPOA, the purpose of which was to construct a monitoring mechanism combined with technical restrictions that kept Iran more than a year from breaking out, meaning that if Iran decided to kick out inspectors, withdraw from the NPT, it would take Iran at least a year to acquire the stocks of uranium and highly enriched uranium hexafluoride that could be converted into weapons-grade fissile material. 1 year. Today, the Iranian government itself acknowledges that Iran is weeks away from achieving that. And that's the problem. It's always been a problem, and it's a problem that these negotiators are trying to deal with. How to reverse, so to speak, Iran's threshold timeline so that instead of weeks, we maybe can get it to months, 6 months. I don't know if you'll ever get it back to a year, and that's unrealistic at this point. But getting it back to 6 months would be an accomplishment. So that's what I think is on the table. Whether or not this is achievable is another question altogether. But at least people are talking in a way that could lead to the prevention of a conflict between Iran and the United States.
Der Iran behauptet, im Falle eines Angriffes durch die USA für einen Krieg gut gerüstet zu sein. Wie schätzt du das ein? Könnte der Iran tatsächlich gefährlich werden für die Vereinigten Staaten? Hat er überhaupt Raketen, die so weit reichen? Es gab vor einiger Zeit Gerüchte über eine angebliche Stationierung von iranischen Raketen in Venezuela.
Iran has a ballistic missile capability that is considerable and efficient. One only need ask the Israelis, who withstood not only Troop Promise, but Troop Promise 2, and where 200 missiles were fired against Iran, the vast majority of which penetrated Israel's vaunted Iron Dome shield, even though it was reinforced with American anti-ballistic missile capacity and struck targets inside Israel. Iran states that it has the ability to launch thousands of missiles against Israel that would achieve the same defeat of the Iron Dome system, and there's no reason to doubt the Iranian statement. Iran has demonstrated previously that it was able to hit American bases in the region. One only recalls the missiles launched against the Al-Abbas air station, Al-Assad air station, air base in Western Iraq in the aftermath of the American assassination of Qasem Soleimani. So this isn't just rhetoric. Iran has genuine capabilities that could bring harm to Israel, have devastating effects on regional oil and gas production, and could have deadly effects on American bases in the region. But Iran doesn't have the ability to destroy the United States. So I think it's irresponsible to speak of Iran's ballistic missile capability without responding that the United States has its own massive military capacity, including nuclear weapons, that cannot be interdicted by Iranian missiles. And if Iran were to choose such an extreme scenario, the results would be most likely the destruction of Iran as a modern functioning nation state. So you can't just view the Iranian capacity in a vacuum. Yes, it's there, it's real. But the other given is that the United States possesses nation-ending capabilities against Iran, should they ever do that. And Iran, let me just remind people what happened the last time a foreign power tried to put missiles into the Western Hemisphere. We had the Cuban Missile Crisis, and we were prepared to go to war with Russia over that. If Iran puts missiles inside Venezuela, we will blow the hell out of Venezuela and blow the hell out of Iran in the process. That's not imperialistic state. It's a statement of fact. So don't. That would be my advice.
Liebe Zuschauer, wenn euch unsere Beiträge gefallen, teilt sie unbedingt in den sozialen Medien. Abonniert unseren Kanal und drückt auf die Glocke, damit ihr keine Veröffentlichung von Gegenpol verpasst.